Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will continue our discussion of Chapter 6 of Observing the Craft, the title of which is Ritual.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual crew. We have very worshipful brother David Colbeth of King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington. Worshipful brother Jarrod Dunham from Penticton 147 in Penticton, BC. I'm Matt Appel, and I'm a member of Mill Creek 243 in Montlake Terrace, Washington. And we have worshipful brother Stephen Chung, who's a member of Prince Charles 153 in Kelowna, BC. And we're going to sort of, as we continue our trek or our journey through this chapter, we're going to be moving from, like we were talking about silence on the last episode, and in darkness and light, and sort of both of those things sort of meet up in the preparation room. And so I guess my first question to you guys is, do your lodges have preparation rooms? And if so, are they like a permanently dedicated room, or is it just a like sit in the coat room kind of thing?
Our preparation room is our kitchen.
Do you like put out the whatever, the sulfur and the mercury and all that sort of stuff, or do you just say, wait here for a minute?
They might be lucky if there's salt and pepper on the counter. I don't know, but no, it was when they designed our lodge hall. Yeah. I know that our old, I mean, I've been in 3 so far. Our old lodge hall in Karamias had a dedicated preparation room. The lodge hall that we were using in Peachland, they have a curtained off area that they use. Like it gets curtained off. And then our lodge hall here in Penticton, it's the kitchen.
Yeah, we have a library that is adjacent to our foyer for our lodge room that we use for the candidates to get prepared in.
I'm pretty sure our building originally had preparation rooms, but sometime in the 50s, they put in an elevator, and the logical place to put it was right outside the lodge room, because that's where the front door was downstairs. And it's just, I'm guessing that's where the preparation room used to be, was basically right where the elevator shaft is now, or somewhere in that area. And
does the elevator open up into the lodge room? Because that would be cool. You just sort of stick the guy in at the basement, hit up, and like it goes up, opens up, and
so we being raised to the degree of a master mason.
But so our preparation room used to be just the men's lounge, and when I first came through 15 years ago, I don't remember there being a lot of traffic necessarily in and out, but I know over the years I've watched where you have a candidate getting ready or being talked to about things, prepared, if you will, and guys are coming in and out, and because the restroom's right there as well, so they're coming in and out, noise is happening, and I said we've got to change this. And so it may seem silly, but of course the ladies' room isn't being used that night, and it's right next to the lodge room, close to the lodge room, and so it's separate, and there's a lounge in there. There's a lounge space. The bathroom is separate. And so we use the ladies' lounge space actually as our preparation room. And it's right off the lodge door, if you will. Or so it's very convenient. It works really well. And we now have, it's taken a couple of years, but we've now trained all of our members. Okay, we're meeting the guy downstairs at the door. Everybody needs to be in the dining room or in the lodge room, preferably in the lodge room. Nobody in the hallways mingling. But then we take him upstairs right into the preparation room, and he's there the whole time. He doesn't come out. And so the idea of having a separate space, I think, is important for sure. At least for that. He's talking about something more, though.
Right. Yeah. So in the context of the the book here, I think he's talking about a dedicated room where you would have a skull, and it would be black, and you would have I guess some lodges do the vitriol and have the rooster and all sorts of stuff in there. And I know my lodge has nothing like that. Our lodge room doesn't have anything like that nearby, I don't even think we could put something in like that, other than maybe, no, we just don't. So I would love to see that. I will say it is my understanding, and I'm far from an expert, that there are jurisdictions where it's explicitly forbidden, that you're not allowed to have anything like that. And I'm guessing I might know somebody who knows something about that.
Jarrod, for those listening, Jarrod raised his hand.
Oh, it's my understanding that it has been banned in our jurisdiction, that it is not allowed in any way, shape, or form. I may be mistaken, but it has been explained to me, because I remember bringing it up when I was master of the lodge, and it was thoroughly poo-pooed. If you give me a minute, I can go to the library and check.
Go for it, Steve. Go for it. Uh-oh. He wants to say something, but he doesn't. Those listening, it's a moment for Steve. I haven't seen this before.
Well, that would be interesting to know, Jarrod. If you can confirm that would be fantastic to know, because I'm of the opinion that we should have a room of reflection that is dedicated for that purpose, because I don't think that they can get that same impact in our library or our foyer. I have seen, like when I went in my travels, I've seen like in Cuba, the room of reflection for the whole Grand Lodge building is this little, you open this rickety old door and you go down a few stairs, and it is pitch black with the skulls and crossbones and everything all set up. It's a permanent staged room, and they use that, and it makes so much sense. And I've seen it elsewhere, but it would be really interesting to know, to confirm whether or not that has been banned in our jurisdiction, because I think it should not be. But
I'm guessing too, with the pierced lips, that maybe there are some lodges that that are conducting it that maybe shouldn't be.
I've actually been to a lodge in another jurisdiction that they even had 3 preparation rooms that were in the basement of their building, and they had one for each degree, and they had different things in them and stuff. It was actually really cool.
Well, talking about basements in our elevator, that was one thought that we could, and I hadn't thought about having them separate spaces. I didn't realize that we're supposed to be separate spaces, technically, the preparation room versus the reflection room, necessarily, until I read that. I just didn't make that connection. And so now we've been talking about the possibility of our basement lobby, if you will, of the elevator area. We could easily paint that black, and then so we could send the guy down there for his reflection, and then bring him up in the elevator, and then take him to the preparation room. We originally thought about
the elevator shaft. You could nobody go to the bottom floor.
We originally thought about having him prepared down there as well, and bring him up in his state of darkness. So I don't know. It's interesting that there's 2 separate spaces. I hadn't thought about that. So
I will say, I kind of feel like we did blow past some of this. So the room of reflection, in addition to being a place for reflection, would be, as far as tying it into this chapter, is a place it'll be relatively dark, maybe not pitch black. There's usually a candle or something to illuminate the objects there. It would be quiet, so the brother or candidate could contemplate what is going on around them, what is going to happen, what their expectations are for the evening. Sometimes there's paper and pen provided. Sometimes there's like a questionnaire, or they ask them a question and that sort of thing. So it combines both silence and this darkness concept that we were just talking about, as far as tying it again back to what they're talking about in the book.
Yeah, because he talks about, or our degrees talk about coming from darkness to light, and they don't just mean an active removal of a particular device or turning on the lights. Yeah, it's interesting. Not to give away a whole lot here, but there's a custom where we flip the lights on at a certain point, and us Masons will recognize that maybe correlates with a particular event that happens with the candidate. And I'm thinking, we don't really need to do that. That's for our benefit more than it is for him, because even if it's in a dim lit area, being brought to light still provides a significant amount of light, even by candlelight or by dim light, if that makes sense. If you have your eyes closed for a long time, and then
well, that brings to another thing, David, where he talks in here about incandescent lights versus flames, actual candles, and that experience. And I think that coming from that room, that man should be blindfolded from that room before he comes into that lodge room for his entered apprentice degree, and should not see any light from the room of reflection all the way in. But that's just my personal opinion of how I think that should be done, so that he is brought to light from that room of reflection. That's just my opinion.
So you would make him fully prepared in that reflection room, where where Andrew's talking about that they have two different rooms. There's a reflection room, then they're released from that reflection room to be prepared to be the candidate, which is how I've heard mostly done. I hadn't thought about that, but as I now think about the lodges that I know that do it, that's exactly how that happens. They have the reflection, and then they come out of the reflection into their preparation area to be prepared.
Well, not having a room of reflection, I don't know how it's customary to be done exactly, but I like the idea. I think that the giving a man the time to actually just focus and think on those exact things before he does them, it makes it that much more impactful in his mind.
So what of the symbols in the room? He talks about the walls being painted and things being drawn on the walls. You mentioned, Matt, a few particular items. I get that they're cool for us to know that he's sitting there in front of these things and seeing them on the wall. And some guys maybe have had some study and they might have some idea of what these things are. But I know if I was in a room like that, I wouldn't have any idea what any of this stuff was, and it might have freaked me out a little bit. And then the theory is that you learn later what those are. Well, I don't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, so how do I remember what I had was in the room of darkness?
I always thought the chamber of reflection would be much better served if you did it just before the third.
And doesn't he allude to that? I think he alludes to that. I'm pretty sure he says that that maybe it's reserved best for the sublime degree.
Right. Because at least by that time you've been introduced to some of the rites and rituals and symbolism of Freemasonry, so you would have a better understanding of what you're being put into, rather than some group suddenly put you in a room with a skull and some other stuff in it as your first experience, and it's like, what kind of creepy nut bars am I dealing with now?
Well, exactly. And as I was thinking that, how if I had been brought into that initially, I don't know. And it says, he alludes to this, that if a man is experiencing these things and has doubts, then that's when he should depart. Well, is it? I mean, we normally try to, we don't give away secrets, but we certainly try to prepare a man as much as he can to be ready, to know he's ready for it, to the degree, to receive the degrees. Of course, we can't give him all the secrets, but how do you allude to that piece? I mean, there's even some phrasing in the obligation that as we got to that obligation, I thought, well, I don't agree with that, but he said all brothers and fellows have done before. And so it must be okay. And all these guys are standing around and they're all kind of my friends that I've met. They must be okay for me to continue and to say these things. They wouldn't put me through this if it wasn't okay. But yeah, I was brought into a blackened room with things around the room that I didn't understand or recognize.
Well, and symbols, like, okay, so 300 years ago, 300 years ago, there was a certain memento mori paintings were very common. What do you,
It's supposed to be a pipe. It's supposed to be a pipe.
oh,
300 years.
I'm like, I'm not doing that right now. So
Well, maybe incense. We talk about incense anyway.
incense. Oh, that's okay. But no, but like 300 years ago, memento mori paintings and still lifes were a very common theme for people to have in their houses and other places. And so a lot of the symbolism, a lot of the symbols that are present in a chamber of reflection would have made sense to people back then. But as we don't have that as part of our cultural, I don't want to say upbringing, but like our cultural experience, throwing someone into a room with that right off the bat would be very jarring and possibly, would cause them to think twice about going forward. So that's why I think that if you are going to do a chamber of reflection, possibly before the second degree, ideally before the third degree.
Is that somewhat of, is it supposed to do that though? Is it you think it's supposed to be jarring of sorts, or some of the intent?
Well, but no, I don't think it's supposed to. It's supposed to make you think. It's supposed to make you contemplate. It's not supposed to make you wonder what the hell you just got yourself into. Because it's supposed to, from my understanding of the chamber of reflection, and some groups, I know that some lodges they'll have like a list of questions that you have to ponder in front of you and stuff, and it's supposed to make you look inside and think about the deeper meanings of everything. And I think, as much as I think chambers of reflection are a good thing, like they're an interesting idea, I don't think that it's necessarily the best first exposure to Freemasonry that people should have.
And
I don't think I honestly don't think the average person is prepared to go through that experience.
Maybe that's why it's locally accepted that it's it's done in Scottish Rite before their fourth degree and not in Blue Lodge. But
well, there you go. You're doing it.
What if a guy doesn't? What if a guy doesn't go anywhere beyond Blue Lodge? Right, he's never had that experience. So I think you might be on the nail, hit the nail on the head and have it before the third degree, because by then they already understand that every one of us has already gone through what they're always about to go through. So
and they've been exposed to symbols and allegory now for two experiences, so they understand that this isn't just us throwing them into a heavy metal group, green room, and that they're supposed to, what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like as someone alluded to earlier, having a if not an explanation of each thing in it, a general explanation of what's going on, not just sit here, and also having symbols that were appropriate to the current time and place. Not that I want to modernize the ritual or anything, but having symbols in that room that are appropriate to our current idiom would go a long way also. Because whatever, sulfur and mercury and writing vitriol on the wall doesn't mean anything to most guys, whereas saying here's a skull, a symbol of mortality, and here's a pencil for you to write what goes forth into eternity, or whatever it is.
Put a cassette tape, because that's dead medium, so they understand the concept of mortality. So
here is your Microsoft Zune to record your thoughts on.
Yeah, what would be wrong with having a nice script font, the word mortality next to or near the skull, if you will, or all these things to give a little explanation, I guess, of what they are? Or I don't know. If I was in a room, especially if it was dark, and I saw these things, I might, what is all this stuff? I wouldn't have any idea what it was. And then the theory is you explain it later. I'm supposed to remember, oh, that's right, that was there and that was there. And I can guess we could see some of that being tied in, but I agree. Maybe we have a second degree tomorrow, and we've done a pretty good job of expanding on some of the elements for our first degree and even our third degree, but our second degree is a little bit wanting. we don't have seemingly anything special for it. And I was thinking, gosh, it would be nice to do something.
But if, I mean, how is it then that Andrew states here that on page 101 that those that are already aware of the term may be surprised to learn that the chamber of reflection was meant to be the very first experience of the initiate into Masonry and not a precursor to an appendant body or further degrees.
Well, that's like I pointed out, is that, but if at, starting again, 300 years ago, people understood those symbols because they would have seen them in some format.
Because there was lots of symbols done back then. Yeah, okay, makes sense.
No, but as I said, the Memento Mori paintings were very common. Like these were common symbols that they would have seen in media of their time, but they're not now. So this is, and oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say it. This is one of those times when maybe something has aged out and should be changed to a different, like moved from being the first experience to being something where they can actually appreciate the symbolism after having been instructed in symbolism itself.
Okay, Jared, the word's modernized. It's okay.
No, I will never shall those words be uttered from these lips. But so I mean, I agree. I mean, it probably was meant to be their first experience, but modern man doesn't understand these symbols. Doesn't readily understand. I mean, we see a skull, we understand death, but it's not. We don't see it in the same way.
Well, even when I first joined Masonry, I didn't get the idea that the skull meant immortality or mortality. It didn't. I didn't necessarily relate that. I just thought it was a scary thing on Halloween. And even not right away, I didn't get it. Right. It took me a little while. I'm a little slow though, but it took me a while to understand that this is an okay thing. Skull and crossbones are a reminder of our immortality, our mortality, the immortality of the soul. And so I think some of us learn differently about those things. But I also think, like that second hit Steve had read, that not a precursor to the dependent body. I think he was also making the point that it shouldn't be only outside of Blue Lodge. It should definitely be in Blue Lodge, this chamber somewhere. I agree. I don't know if it should be, maybe there could be some. I mean, I think we do a pretty good job. We don't have a chamber of reflection, but we certainly allow the man to sit on his own in the room, in the preparation room, on his own to reflect on his ideas. I think in the future we're going to implement just something. I was just talking with a guy this weekend at Scottish Rite about what they do at their lodge, and they do have questions. They seal them up and do all kind of fancy stuff. But even if you didn't do that, if you just had a guy sit while he's sitting there waiting 10, 15 minutes, contemplate. Here's some things to contemplate. If you want to write it out, great. If you don't want to write it out, it's fine. But here's some things to rather than having him sit on the couch and thinking about the game today or work today or whatever was going on, give him something to think about. Just like that moment of silence we're talking about in Lodge. Give me something to think about. Don't let my mind wander, because it goes to a dangerous place.
So since we seem to have run our course on the Chamber of Reflections, if that's the combination of silence and the combination of light and darkness Steve had alluded to earlier, there's a mention of the use of candles that I found interesting. I know our lodge, and I think I know of a couple others where open flames are expressly forbidden by our by our landlords. Do you guys have thoughts on this? I'm curious.
I literally just got a hold of some electric candles and put them out for our last degree and said, guys, what do you think? And change is hard, brothers. Change is hard. We went back to our little incandescent lamps.
So you're talking about going from incandescent lamps to pretend candles, not going from real candles to pretend candles.
Yeah, we have the same issue. We are our own landlord, but we are landlord basically because our building's a chimney.
Well,
So-
and he says right in here, he says the infamous Masonic light bulb is not only an insufficient substitute, but an unbecoming item of kits that takes attention away from the genuine working tools which are on the altar. And at the moment the candidate's attention is drawn to these lights, they're told that their representative meaning in such a way that should only be represented by the simple flame. And you can't do that with even with the flickering Masonic light bulb that I now have in my home in my display case, because back in the day, one of our past masters, Grant and Diamond, initiated going back to candles, and we did away with the light bulbs. And though our building manager wasn't really happy when we accidentally spilled wax on the carpet, did our best to clean it up, and it hasn't happened since. But I think that going back to the original candles has made a different impact on the impression of our candidates as those things are being explained. Thankfully, I mean, we had a brother in the area that was a craftsman, and he made new candlestick holders and everything else for us, so that the wax didn't go over the edges and onto the carpet. But I think it's
Out of
made a big
curiosity, how do you
difference
guys light them?
with
2
lighter.
sticks, rub them together.
Well, it always seemed a bit like, I mean, I prefer real candles over the lamps that we have. We have those kitschy square and compass filament light bulbs, which some past master of our lodge must have bought 1,000 of them at some point, because we've got an entire box of these things. But I find myself wondering sometimes when I go to something like that, or even at my church, we'll light like the Advent candles or whatever around Christmas time. Getting out the click, 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 click thing, it kind of breaks the mood too. But I don't know what the right answer is.
Well, we had thought about using proper matchsticks, but being that we have carpet and fabric around, it's more of a fire hazard. So for that simple reason, we've gone to using that clicker.
We at Headley, I love saying those words. We at Headley used to have the combination snufter with the little wax string in it that we used, and so we'd light the little wax string and you'd carry it up to the altar, so you didn't hear that click 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 too often, and then they would light from that, and then it was great because then you just sort of slid it back a little bit and it got snuffed out and it was just magical.
So let me ask this. How do you arrange the candles? Are they on the altar? Are they on candlesticks separately? And in what position?
Well, considering that
now
you can't really talk about that in open outside of
Well, there's lots of pictures around. There's lots of pictures.
Ours were in candlesticks, and they are arranged in a triangular formation.
Yep, ours are in candlesticks in a triangular formation around the altar, and depending on which past master you talk to would depend on which how they're placed.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
but back in my day, this is the way it was done.
Well, I bought for Headley Lodge. I actually bought from a church supply store. They were white metal. They hold the candle in it, and they have like a little cap on the top, so it always looked like a properly formed candle, but it had a spring in it that would push the candle up. So so you wouldn't get they were always the same height, so you never had uneven candles and everything.
Interesting.
You're making me harken back to my altar boy days. So, with that being a topic we really don't need to discuss, does anybody have any last thoughts on candles or lighting before we retire? Hearing none. Thank you for bearing with us, for enduring with us chapter 6 of or our discussion of chapter 6 rather of the of observing the craft. If there's a lot of meaty stuff in chapter 6, in my opinion. But on behalf of David and Jarrod and Stephen and myself, we want to thank you all for listening. I keep meaning to say at the beginning of the episode that I want to invite people to comment on our social media thing, because I feel like I slap it down in the end here, and then everyone tunes out when they start hearing me talk anyway. But we invite you to comment on YouTube or social media, etc. We like to hear your input and get some new thoughts on subjects. So with that, thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.